Hello, before we continue, I'd like to go over the command panel so that we cover everything that it has. And to do so, I'm going to create a plane. So make sure that you're at the standard primitives. And by hitting and holding the Control key, I'll just create this plane from this midpoint. Let's Alt W to get inside the viewport, and we can also see that I'll still have my grid here, and it can sometimes be a little bit annoying. So to hide it, we just have to press the G key. G for grid, which is very simple. I will also change my default shading to clay and make sure to press the F4 key just to see all of the lines of the mesh. Let's go into the parameters for this plane here, and here in length segments and width segments, let's just type in 20 by 20 here. Alright, now that we've done that, let's convert this to an editable poly. So right click, convert to edit poly. Okay, let me collapse all of these options. Alright, so starting from the selection tab, I'm going to select the polygon, and let's see what this shrink and grow options do. So if I wanted to just select or keep selecting the polygons around this face, I would just go ahead and click on grow. You can see that it's starting to grow my selection in a proportional way. I can also do that with shrink to do the opposite, and I can also pick the vertex and select just one of the vertex here, and let's go more into the midpoint here. And if I go ahead and just click multiple times the grow option and then hit my W key to turn on my gizmo, I can do something like this. Let's just shrink this, okay, and now I've selected something else like so. Let's hit shrink again and shrink once more, and you can see how this will help us model something interesting. Now let's go ahead and see what soft selection does. And the soft selection will actually smooth out my selections. So let's hit use soft selection, and you can see that we have a gradient color going on here. So the selection which has a more darker color will be selected a little bit harder than the lighter colors. So for this, I'm just going to create another plane. So let's go to the plus icon and create it. Let's go and convert this to an edit poly. And with my 1 key, I'll be selecting one of these vertex. Let's go inside soft selection again and activate the use soft selection. Alright, now, if I wanted to increase this selection, I would just play with the fall of value. Like so. Now let's see what happens if I just start to lift this. You can see that all of my selection is a little bit smoother than the ones that we saw over here in the first example. So the darker colors, again, mean that it's going to be a harder selection, while the more lighter colors will be in the contour of the selection. I can just start by playing around again like so, lifting this a little bit, and so on. I can also start to play with the pinch, so the pinch will actually control the smoothness of the selection. So if I just go and play around with this, I can also see how the graph in this little window is acting. So it's basically showing me how the selection is going on. Now the bubble, and just by seeing the graph, I can see what type of selection I'm doing right now. So it's a very handy tool. Now I can also, instead of using these values, I'm going to reset them all to the standards, and let's just give the fall off a little bit of value here. Let's say that I want a specific selection. I'll just go ahead and pick the paint option, and this will give me basically a brush. So if I start painting, you can see that the first click gave me a orange color. Okay, so if I just increase the size of this brush by going into the brush size, okay, let's double it. Okay, I can play around with this. And now I want to select these parts of the plane, and now let's hit the W for our gizmo, and that has the same effect. Now if I go ahead and paint it again, and let's say that I want this to turn into a harder selection, let's just reduce the value for this brush. I'll just paint on top of it, and you can see how it has changed into this orange color. So this is very useful when we're using or creating terrains. And now let's go to the edit geometry. So here in edit geometry, we have some options down here, which are the create, which we'll be using in a better example in the future once we're modeling our architectural site. Then we have the attach, which is the opposite of detach, and we've seen what detach does. It's basically going to just split one of our faces to be a single element. Now attach will do the opposite. So if I'm just going to duplicate this plane here, and I'm going to copy it. Now let's say that I want this two planes or surfaces to be one single element. I'll just hit attach, and you can see once I'm hovering on top of this plane, this one will be highlighted. So I'll just click on it. Now to unselect this attach, I'll just press it again. Okay, so now they're one single object, and if I, for instance, pick the polygon, I will be able to select this just as a single element. Okay, so now let's see some other options. Now, if I'm selecting one of the vertex, edge, border, polygon element, I'll be able to use this slice plane. So let's see what slice plane does. It will basically give me this region in which I could use it to slice or split this current geometry here. You can also notice that we have this gizmo going on here, and I can rotate this plane. So let's rotate it. And let's make sure that we have our angle snap toggle on so that we rotate it in 90 degrees. There we go. Now you can see that if I move this, I'll be able to just cut or slice these geometries using this slice plane. And this will create new vertices, new faces, and so on. So if I wanted to slice this current position, I'll just go to slice. Now once I move my plane, you can see that I've done that slice right there. And I can even turn it diagonally if I want by using my E key and my angle and just dragging it like this and then slice it again. You can see now I've created some new surfaces and vertices there. Now let's unselect the slice plane and let's go to polygon to see if I can just grab these faces that I've done with my slice plane. And keep in mind that I'm still selecting my soft selection. So let's go in here and deactivate the soft selection so that I can only select these polygons right here. Now the quick slice works in a different way, but it has the same principle, just to create new vertices and faces or just to cut this geometry basically. So let's pick quick slice. And I can use my arrow just to make a pivot. So if I click here once, you can see that my selection has created this pivot in which I can manipulate this slice angle. So let's just click once here. Because I'm still selecting the quick slice, I'll just create another pivot over here and say that I wanted to slice this surface like so. And now I'm just creating lots of new faces and vertices. Alright, now I have my cut, and my cut is also a slicing tool. But this one will work in a different way. If I just press somewhere in my surface, I can start to create different vertices by clicking once and then just start to click wherever I want to create a new vertices inside this geometry here. And it will snap to the existing vertices, as you can see. But it doesn't matter. I can just keep on clicking wherever I want, like so. And once I'm done with this, I'll just right click. And now I'll just unselect this cut option. If I go to my polygon selection, you can see that now I have done a custom shaped slicing there. And I'm going to just right click and extrude just to see how this looks. And check. So I can end up with some sort of fissure here in my ground, for instance. I now have the mesh smooth. Okay, so what mesh smooth will basically do is just multiply the polygons that are creating this mesh. So if I click once, you can see that now they've multiplied. And then if I click again, they'll just soften up my surface. Just like a turbo smooth, for instance. Okay, let's press F4, but we have to be careful of how many mesh smooth we apply to this geometry because of the polygons and vertices count. I also have the make planar option, and this will just delete all my progress and turn these two surfaces into a planar geometry. Okay, so Ctrl Z again. And now view align, grid align will basically just align my creations into my current construction plane. So let's just rotate these guys, and now let's just press grid align. You can see that automatically they'll just align the surfaces to my construction plane, which is basically my grid. Now the relax works a little bit like a mesh smooth, but without adding any more polygons. So if I just relax this, and let's open the settings actually, and let's just start to relax this surface. And you can also just press multiple times the relax option, and you can see how this acts. Alright, so let's collapse edit geometry, and let's move on to subdivision surface, and these are basically just display options, and also the subdivision displacement. We wouldn't go into these because they're basically just displays options, and we don't need to change any of that. Now the paint for deformation, it's used for the terrain creation, but we'll see more of that once we're creating our terrain for our architectural visualization purposes. So that's it for this lecture. I'll see you in the next one.